Hello, and welcome back to my last video in my series on functions. This video is actually not going to be about functions, but I feel like we've gone 95% of the way with this example, so let's finish it out. So if you're looking to learn something about functions, this may or may not be a place where that happens. In our last example, we talked a bit about subs. I'm going to show you where we're at. So we had created this program that randomly generates enemies. And every time I click this button, an enemy gets generated. And it's kind of interesting to see these numbers. Like, okay, so some of them are stronger than others. The player's always level 25, speed. Alright, so we can look at it like this, but the problem is if I want 100 enemies, I need to click generate 100 times, and that's not such a great solution. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to introduce the concept of looping, and I'm going to make some further videos about looping later. There's a good chance that most people watching this video have already seen loops or used loops, and so probably not going to get a ton out of it. And it's always good to put things in a useful context, so maybe you will. Don't be alarmed if you're still just trying to wrap your head around the idea of functions. My next series of videos are going to be about subs, and then I'll start talking about some more complicated issues associated with subs and functions. But for now, I'm going to write something called a for next loop. So the reason I'm making this choice is not because it's the easiest thing to understand, but because it's the shortest or the least amount of code. So my syntax is going to look like this: for I as integer equals 1 to 50. So that's how I set the loop up, and then the loop ends with a next statement. So what this means is I'm creating a temporary variable named I. It could be called anything in the world. I'm saying it's type integer, which is a very common thing to do. I'm going to start at 1, I'm going to count to 50. In repetition terms, that's a way of saying I want to do something 50 times. So what's going to happen here is when you click that button to generate enemies, it's not going to generate one enemy, it's going to generate 50 enemies. And let's examine how that happens. It's a nice use of functions. So the first thing that's going to happen once we jump into this loop, I starts off at 1. So as long as I is less than 50, we're going to go into this code. So we're going to generate speed right here, we're going to generate strength here, and here we're going to pass that strength and speed to the toString subroutine. Then, so we're going to print out an enemy, and then we're going to jump back up to the top, go through the same process again. The cool thing here is you can now see the reusability of the subs and the functions happening. So 50 is a lot, but it's also, that's the strength of programming. We can actually solve problems that we wouldn't want to do with a pen and paper. I mean, you can just calculate random math and come up with enemies, but I'm going to click generate and spit out 50 enemies. And you can see that some of them repeat, but for the most part, I just generated 50 random enemies. And back in the beginning when I was setting the stage for this example, I said that you might want to use this kind of thinking to create a video game where there was 1,000 enemies. And just the idea that just these little bits of code, right? So here we've got about 15 lines. We just kept reusing those thousands of times, and we don't have to keep writing more, right? And if we ever make a decision, this is nothing I haven't talked about before, but if I ever made the decision that I need my enemies to be stronger, I can just take these values here, increase them, and now when I run my program, I don't remember what level I was last time, but now my enemies are going to be stronger, right? Because there's this idea, everyone likes to think that you're going to sit down, you're going to write a program, and it's going to work perfectly the first time. Let me just burst your bubble. That's not going to happen. And breaking your program into modules like this allows you additional flexibility to just go in there and change things pretty easily. So like I said, this doesn't have a whole lot to do with subs and functions, but it does show you how you can use them with repetition to really get some things done. My next series of videos will be about subs, right? I've introduced subs. We'll look at a few videos on subs, talk about some things like overriding functions. We'll also talk about by ref, by val. So some of those things that I've just been saying we will talk about later will happen. Thanks for watching, and keep watching. I'm going to keep cranking out some more videos.